Coming up today on LMM, I stick my head inside a firebox, pose like a model, and then get trapped inside a locomotive.
Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM. Today I'm at the Dean Forest Railway to take out the pride of their fleet, and I promise you guys, this one is absolutely superb and maybe my favourite engine yet. There are few designs of steam locomotive that are so synonymous with a railway as Pannier Tanks and the Great Western Railway. When you think of the Great Western, one of the first thoughts that will come into your mind is a pannier tank winding its way through a valley. Now, behind me, we have 9681, a pannier tank, which therefore means it's a product of the Great Western Railway. Apart from this one isn't. This one was built in 1949, which means it's actually a British Railways engine. Yes, it was built at Swindon. Yes, it's a Great Western design, but it never ran on the Great Western. So this is not actually a Western pannier tank in the traditional sense, which means also British Railway black is the only correct colour for it to wear. And I like that because I am a big fan of BR black on Great Western engines. Now, you'll be looking at this going, 96, that's a number I don't know, because the Great Western Railway had a wonderful way of naming classes, and it makes it very easy to identify because the first two numbers are the class and the next two numbers are its number, and they had these on beautiful brass plates on the side. The problem with this system is when you get over 100 locomotives, you don't have any more. So the way the Great Western got over this was they made a whole new class up. So despite the fact that this is a 5700 pannier tank, it's now one of the batch which is 96. And as you can tell from the number, they already were all going through those. In fact, there were well over 800 of this class of pannier tank produced, making it, well, shows that it was a very successful design. And just look at that. As lines and proportions go, the pannier tank is pretty much perfection for the branch line engine. It is absolutely beautifully proportioned. The size of the wheels, the spacing, the size of the tanks, the length of the whole locomotive come together, which makes something absolutely quintessentially British, Western and a branch line engine. And as you may be able to tell, I'm in love. One of the glorious things about the Pannier is the proportions of it. It is a beautiful machine. I've driven all kinds of industrial locomotives that have some massive great overhang with a pair of tiny wheels in the middle. But being an 060 with the wheels coming almost to the end of the frames, it looks every inch a thoroughbred because this is a proper mainline locomotive designed to go out working on branch lines just like what is here at the Dean Forest Railway. This is very much the stonking ground that a machine like this was built to work on. And having one back here working exactly where it was designed to work is absolutely superb, and I cannot wait to go out on this and actually take it for a run because there's nothing quite as good as being on a locomotive in its home country. Now, this thing weighs 49 tonnes, and with its two cylinders which are on the inside, you'll have noticed there's nothing on the outside bar the coupling rods, which means it will be absolutely glorious to oil up later. They are two cylinders which are 17.5 inches by 24 inches. And those combined with the wheels, which are 4 foot 7 inches and a half, mean it has a tractive effort of 22,515, whatever it is we measure tractive effort in. Basically, it means it will quite happily handle a 5-coach train up the railway here, and it is a long old stonk. Basically, in preservation terms, this will walk away with anything you want with it. And in the changing times of preservation, things like this are going to be the most desirable and the most useful of locomotives. They're relatively efficient on coal. It holds about 3¼ tonnes of coal in the bunker, and that will last it all day. And it will run quite happily, efficiently on coal, handling everything in preservation, trundling along at 25 miles an hour without any stress. It's not going to overwork it. It's just absolutely perfect for preservation. Now, when you hear me say pannier tank, some of you may be going, well, what does that mean? There are various types of the tank engine. You have your standard tanks with a big water carrying tank alongside, a saddle tank where it's draped like a saddle over the side, a well tank where it is like a well in between the frames, and a pannier tank where the tanks are two panniers alongside the side. And you may be going, well, why do that? Because clearly you've lost part of your water carrying capacity. It won't have as much range if they went all the way down. This is a wonderful bit of design. Because the tanks are up in the air, it means you can get inside, you can go through it means that you can actually work on the thing. A traditional side tank with the tanks coming all the way down, to get to the inside motion, you've got to go underneath and in. This one, I can get to half of it by reaching through the frames. It's not fun, but you can actually get to it. And this was a Western thing, and a very much stereotypical of everything Western. If it's not a Pannier tank, well, it wasn't a Western tank engine really, was it? Well, excluding, you know, things like the auto tank, but forget those. This is exactly what the Western region did. Pannier tanks. It's something so easily recognisable as being a Western, and yet stylish and efficient and effective, despite the fact, you know, you don't have as much water as a normal tank engine, but we'll gloss over that for easy to get into. And of course, those two tanks are joined by the balance pipe that goes between them. They're not two independent tanks, they do work as one continuous thing. Now, despite the fact that I said that this isn't technically a Great Western tank engine, it's still built to the same design. So it's a British Railways built Great Western tank engine, and it has many of the requirements to make it a Great Western engine. For instance, it has the cast number plate on the side. Now, this one isn't brass. It was a money-saving technique to have this cast just out of normal metal and then painted, rather than having it made out of brass, and brass is expensive. It does, however, despite appearances, have a brass safety valve bonnet, although that was immediately painted black. But under the black, it is brass. And a couple of the other fittings that normally would have been brass were replaced with more contemporary and cheaper materials because, yeah, British Railways saving money. But it is still as designed as a Great Western tank engine. And it's got some lovely things. I love the size of the dome on it. It's such a massive great dome in the middle. Compared to the rest of it, it's just so... It almost jumps out at you, almost overshadows everything at the top. And it's full of wonderful little mod cons for the fact on each running board, there's a little toolbox where you can put things like oil, the tools you need for everyday running. It's glorious. There are lamp brackets along the side where you can put your lamps to keep them stored nicely and out the way. There are handrails and steps, make it easier to climb up to be able to investigate the machine. It's beautifully laid out. And then this was a general do anything, go anywhere engine. Above my head, you can see the route availability and power classification. Now, the Great Western, for some reason, decided to have their way of classifying power as backwards. So that means that A is basically useless and E is pretty damn powerful. So this is bog standard in the middle of the road for power for Western things. The colour of the disc indicates that this is one step below completely unlimited go anywhere. So this was basically go almost anywhere apart from the most tight and weight restricted parts of the network, and it could pull, yeah, most things. It's a general go anywhere, do anything engine, and absolutely just stunningly perfect. I don't think there's anything else that has quite the lines of a Great Western Pannier. It's stunning. She was built at the home of the Great Western Railway at Swindon and was outshopped on the 3rd of May 1949 and immediately was sent off to Tondu. And then she moved around a lot. Some locomotives had kind of a base they spent a lot of their life at. This one moved around a lot. It went to Abergavenny, then it went to Oswestry, and then headed off to Wolverhampton for a heavy general overhaul. Then coming back, it was at Cardiff East Docks, then went to Cardiff Central, then spent a bit of time at Barry, which is foreshadowing for what happened next. After that, it went back to Cardiff East Docks, which is where it spent the last of its days. It was formally condemned on the 6th of August 1965, although there are a few pictures of it still outside the shed a couple of weeks later, so possibly not in use. It then drove itself to Barry Scrapyard, and I want you to understand the sheer travesty of that. This was a working steam locomotive, able to propel itself and take itself to what was meant to be its final resting place. And it shows the short-sightedness of that modernisation plan to take a locomotive that worked, that was able to drive itself and go, yeah, scrap that. It wasn't an engine that was completely worn out. In fact, this thing, at the time of it being scrapped, had done just over 283,000 miles, which in the terms of a steam engine is nothing. It's ridiculous that this was sent to a scrapyard after such a short service history. It had barely been running. And at that point, the story should have ended, because sat at Barry, it joined all the rusting hulks which would be cut up for scrap. The most impressive thing about this is the group now reckon that at this point in time, it's done another 100,000 miles in preservation, which is an absolutely incredible mileage to have racked up basically on this railway here, especially when you consider that a round trip is about 9 miles. It's been up and down this railway an awful lot. But as most of us who are into our railway preservation know, Barry ended up from being the end of locomotives to the new beginning of so much that we have in preservation today. Lots of people tend to think that Die Woodman was the saviour of steam locomotives, and this isn't really the case. Whilst they were slow to cut up locomotives that gave lots of groups the opportunity to save the money to save them, they still went through and cut up many locomotives that went there. Barry was by no means a safe place for steam engines. This one, salvation came in 1973, where the Humberside Locomotive Trust decided that they were going to buy it. And then they didn't. And so this thing continued to languish in a scrapyard, so close to being saved for preservation. This turned out to be quite fortuitous because the Forest Pannier Tank Fund wanted an engine just like this. And when they learnt that the group who had earmarked it decided they didn't want it, they jumped straight in and handed over a cheque to Mr. Die Woodman in February of 1975, meaning that its stay in Barry was just shy of 10 years. Of course, even though it had been saved, it didn't mean that everything was going to be plain sailing from here on out. When the low loader arrived ready to transport this away from the scrapyard, they realised that it lacked one very vital component, and that was a winch. Generally speaking, when you're recovering something from a scrapyard, the winch is quite important to haul it onto the trailer. There was panic amongst the volunteers who had come to see their engine saved. How are they going to get it loaded up? Then, in the distance, at the other end of the yard, they saw an 08 shunting wagons. And so somebody was voluntold to go and have a little chat with the driver and see maybe he might be persuaded to give the thing a little push. And sure enough, an 08 trundled into view, pushing a load of wagons which were destined for the scrapyard. They buffered up and surprisingly easily, and with no further issues, pushed the pannier up onto the waiting low loader, which I just think is lovely. That's its final movement, being pushed up by a train. It was then taken away and came here. It was one of the first engines to arrive at the newly formed Dean Forest Railway. In fact, it came here before there really was a railway. In fact, it became a pain in the backside because it was put on a short length of track and kept having to be moved with the track being barred over back and forth to move it out of the way when new building projects were going on. And inevitably, during this, it fell off several times, and the group moving it got very good at jacking and packing and putting it back on its short length of track. For a Barry wreck, it was in remarkably good condition. In fact, the group had gone to Barry and removed a load of the fittings because it was almost complete, which by the time it came out of Barry was becoming more and more of a rare thing because people would have bought a locomotive out of Barry and gone, oh, I'm missing component X. Oh, look, there's a piece of scrap over there that has component X on it. I'll borrow that. There were some items that had been removed by this point, including the collars which go over the ends of the conrods. These weren't there, and so the group looked at making new. And then during a visit to a private place, they turned up and were like, what are these? And stamped with 9681 were the collars that somebody had gone, that's a nice keepsake, I'll have that. But of course that was the time at Barry. People just removed things to keep them as a nice little thing to have. Now, you'd be forgiven for expecting, as a good condition Barry wreck, as soon as it was here and the facilities were in place, they would start working on it to restore it back to its former glory. And they didn't. There were other projects to get on with first. The group had taken out a loan in order to be able to buy it. They'd fundraised for about half the money and had to get a commercial loan to pay the rest of it. However, although they could have paid back the loan a lot earlier, they kept going, ooh, that's a useful thing that we're going to need. Ooh, that's a useful thing that we're going to need, and kept buying more things. And so the loan was actually eventually repaid back in 1980. Which was significantly later than it could have been paid back. But the attitude was taken to go and buy the parts whilst they were available, because who knows when they'd come up again. When restoring a locomotive, it can be hard to work out where different components have gone and who said they were going to do something. So when it came time to put guard irons back on this, they went, where'd the guard irons gone? So couldn't find them, so they ordered a new set of guard irons. And then when they went to fit them, somebody turned up with the set they'd taken home to paint them and restore them, so then they had a set of 8. After countless hours of hard work, the engine steamed for the first time in September of 1984 and quickly cemented itself as a regular performer on the Dean Forest Railway, winning the hearts of the public and the crews alike. So much so that the engine hasn't really gone out that much. During its first ticket, it went off to the Llangollen for an event, to the West Somerset, to the now defunct North Somerset, and to the Gloucester and Warwickshire Railway. So very much staying on Great Western metals. And that was basically it. And then in 1989, it went back to its birthplace, to Swindon, to be part of the opening of a new company that was setting up in the number 20 shop, which was going to handle doing locomotive restorations. And in fact, whilst it was there, it had some work done with some new tubes being fitted. Not being content with going to Swindon once, it returned home and then went back in 1990 for the NRM On Tour event, where it rubbed buffers with none other than City of Truro. And then it stayed a bit longer, having boiler work being done there as well. Number 19 shop was subsequently demolished, and number 20 shop is now the Museum Steam, where you can see loads of Great Western locomotives all lined up in what was part of the place that built them, which is a wonderful museum if you haven't been. Apart from those trips out, it pretty much stayed just here. It was then out of ticket for another 7 years before it returned to service in 2001. And then, to the best of my knowledge and the guys here, it didn't actually go anywhere else. It was just too useful. It is exactly the right size and the right power to be able to handle trains here without any stress. And so it didn't do anything at all. It just went straight through and did that boiler ticket. And then, well, it had got a bit rough. It was in, as I said, good condition coming out of Barry, but all of the extra miles had gone onto it. By the time it went into that overhaul, it was starting to show its age. And this next overhaul was a nut and bolt from the ground up, and cost in the region of some £320,000 plus untold hours of volunteer labour. It has been a proper nut and bolt, proper job, because having spoken to the guys here, if you're not going to do it properly, what's the point in doing it at all? And they have done it absolutely beautifully. It's absolutely stunning. And they completed this overhaul just 3 years ago, so she's still pretty new at the time of filming. Now, the impressive thing about this sum of money that was thrown onto this engine is this was raised by the Dean Forest Locomotive Group. There were no grants. This was all money that they managed to raise themselves to get this going. Now, if you want to be part of the group looking after and maintaining this or some of the other exciting projects they're working on, there's information in the video description on how you can get involved, maybe donate and support them, or just follow the progress on Facebook. And that's basically this thing covered. So I suppose from now, we should go back in time to this morning when she was cold and we had to do all the preparation.
Having successfully travelled back in time to very early in the morning, you join me on board the command centre of the Pannier. So before we could do anything, it's the normal 5 checks. First of all, we ensure that the handbrake over here is on. The regulator is indeed shut, the reverser is in mid-gear, the cylinder drains are open, and then we come over to the single gauge glass because it's Western, and open that up, to fully open it, and then we go, clear! And confirm there is indeed water inside the gauge frame. So with that done, it's time to open up the box and see what we're working with. As this is a proper mainline machine, it is fitted with a baffle plate. And the idea of that is any cold air coming in here through the fire hole door gets directed down into the fire bed. The downside is it means that in order to check the firebox inside the morning, I have to remove that and it's warm. But now we can go and have a look in here. So first off, we have a look at the grate down here and make sure that everything looks dry. And they've done a lovely job because they've cleaned everything out for me, which is lovely. Everything at the front looks good. Then we have the brick arch there, and then we look up to the top here, and we're looking for the physical plug. Whoa. With everything looking good in there, we can go around and check the front. Of course, not forgetting to replace the baffle plate before we go off. Having arrived at the front of the engine, we have a similar problem to what we had on the taff tank, and that is a lack of space here. Luckily, there is a nicely cut board beneath me to give me a bit more room so I can actually look inside here. So, undo that, open that, and now we can have a look inside. So as ever, we're looking for any dampness, any unusual patterns in the ash, and best of all, they've cleaned this out as well, so there's nothing that I need to do here, and everything looks tickety-boo, which means we can shut it back up. With the Smokebox looking good, it was time to load up the footplate with some wood. And with all the wood up on the footplate, it's time to lay ourselves a fire. So as ever, we do this in the way of, oh, that's a nice big pit. Now, laying a fire is very important. It's not just a case of throwing the wood in. Every single piece of wood has to be laid carefully next door to another to make sure that you get the optimum amount of burning. If you don't pay attention at this stage and just lob the wood in and put it higgledy-piggledy, a good fire you won't get. This is an art form that takes years upon years to master. With the fire carefully lit and all care and attention going into that placement of wood, it's time for ignition. So we get ourselves a nice rag, like so, hang it over the edge, and then turn it on. After placing the first rag, I lit the others from it, spreading the fire around the firebox. With our fire lit, it's time to start working on the prep. So I take this handily placed here can, and we start down here working on the coupling rods. Put that back, and now it's move along the engine. So we have a little divot here, which just needs a tiny bit of oil, wipe the worst off, and then once again, fill up this one. And then we fill this one up. Put the cork back in, and then over onto the front. And we can fill this up. And put the cork back in. Now, obviously, we have to do the other side, but as it's identical, there's no point in showing that. However, whilst I am here, there's a couple other bits I've got to do here because the axle boxes are lubricated through the wheels. So we're starting off with this one just here. It just needs a little bit in there. And then we can place that back there. And I've got to reach in here, pull the cork out to be able to fill this little feeder here. Now this is actually really awkward because it's inside the wheel spoke, and to get the can into the right position, it's got to be inside the frames. But with a good slug of oil in there, you can now move half across here, and we have this lubricator which feeds the half shaft. We fill that right up like there. Now, rather than standing up, I'm just going to kind of walk on my knees over to here. It is lovely to have a hard standing around the engine to oil up on. It's just so much nicer than fighting in the gravel and ballast. I then take the cork off here, and it's time to fill up in here again. So, funny enough, there are 3 of these, one on each axle. So reach in here. So whilst I have oiled up engines that are far more difficult to do, having to reach inside the spokes is actually relatively difficult, and also means that you've got to stop the engine in somewhat of the right position, because if the spokes are in the wrong place, you can't get to the lubrication, which does seem to be a bit of a design flaw. And once again, it's the, I'm going to stand up this time, walk along here, and you can never guess what. It's identical on the rear axle as well. But this is a lovely bit of standardisation, the fact that they are all exactly the same in the same place, and so once you've mastered one, you're probably going to be okay with all 3. Now this one's a bit more challenging because I've got the overflow from the injector right where I need it. So it's a reach around into the dark and go, yep, there. And then feed the little can in at a jaunty angle, like, oh yeah, that kind of, oh yeah, that worked. A weird angle to just chuck some oil in, just like that. Feed that back, put the cork back in, and voila. Finally, there's a little lubricator here, which feeds the brake shaft, so a little bit of oil in. And with that filled up and the cork back in, that completes lubrication on this side. Now, there's no point in showing you the other side because it is identical to this. So, unless I can think of something else to do to distract me from it,
the next thing to do is to go underneath and do my favourite thing, inside motion. Before I do make the decision to actually clamber inside, there's a couple of tiny little things I need to do. So we have the cross shaft here that comes down for the reverser, so a little bit of oil into that divot there. Then just a little touch here, on here, and then across here for the sanding linkage. And then there's a big pot here which needs to be filled up, which feeds all of the bits on the inside. This goes to the valve spindles and various other bits there. So we just need to fill this right up like so. It's a big old reserve this, so what I probably should have bought is the can rather than just a feeder, but there we go. That is now done. There's these as well, so I just need to put a little bead just across there, just there, and there. And I've tried putting it off. I've tried thinking of other things to do. There's nothing for it. Ouch. So the thing to go from is, they told me this is the easy way to do it, and I think they were lying. So this is the top expansion link. And then into this one, across there, and we're going to go into that one before putting the cork out of the very top, with the top link there, and fill that up, like so. Excellent. Right, next, got to go in here and reach in, open that up, and just pour into this nice big reserve here that feeds the valve spindles. Again, I definitely should have bought the bigger jug. With that filled, lid, and now good. Then we have a cork here and a little pot on the side. Now this lubricates the little end itself, and so we just fill up this big reserve like so. Excellent. And then I need to shuffle a bit more to get this, and this is the lubricator for the top slipper, which is going to be a pain to get there. Like that. And put the cork in. Having lost my hat the next stage. Oh no, I've dribbled my hair in the oil. Oh no. Is to do the dive block there. And then, yeah, I'm going to have to do the other dive block from the other side because I can't reach that. Fine. We need to move over there next because I can't reach anything else from where I am. Oh, back in the day, the Great Western Railway, you'd have a boy to do this. And they'd go in and sort all this out. And you wouldn't have to do it as a driver because, you know, most drivers would be out of gauge. Okay. Right. I left the oil can on the inside. Oh, my hat. I've said it once, and I will say it again. I hate inside motion engines. Just put it on the outside so people can get to it. It's just... Coming over to this side, I don't need to bother about any of this because it's the same as the other side. The one thing that is different is, as this is a Great Western engine, we have a vacuum pump. So the idea of the vacuum pump is, as you're going along, this goes back and forth off the motion and creates your vacuum, so you don't need to constantly be running your ejector. Very clever. So this has got a lubricator here, which we just need to fill with a bit of lube, like so. And in here, we undo that. And we have a special can of vac pump oil which comes in here, gently into there, and then a little slug into there, like so. This is a special blend, especially for the vac pump itself. With that lubricated, we'll find the lid wherever that's gone and put that back on. And now I actually do need to go underneath. We got to do the eccentrics and the bottom of the expansion links that I can't get to, and the bit on the little end that I couldn't get into. So here we go.
As the loco slowly started to come round, I had no other option but to go underneath.
Now, the nice thing that they have here is a very nice modern pit, which is superb. There's enough room in here for me to stand up and actually get around, and I cannot stress how much nicer this makes the prep. So we're starting off by going up here and reaching the lubricator for the bottom slipper that I couldn't reach from the top. Just here. Take the cork out, and what you can goes here, and we just into that, like so. Now, obviously, I have to do all the same on that one, but we're not going to for the point of this. So I'll bring my handy set of steps here so we can do the bottom of the expansion link. So we got my way around here, and we'll do the very bottom of the link here. There's a little divot just in there. And then we have the bottom of the link itself. There's a divot in the center of the expansion link itself, just there for the bottom that goes through the strap. Then I need to repeat it on this side, get into the divot at the bottom of the motion here, and then once again, there's a little bit in there to get just like, there we go, that to lubricate in there. Whilst you're under here, there's a last couple of things to do, which is just put a little bit of oil on the cylinder link here. So this is what goes down to the cylinder cocks. So just a little bit there, a little bit just on there. Then we come across here, and there's a join here. So just a little bit of oil onto there. Like, there we go. There, there, and then just a bit there. And then finally down here, we have a lubricator here on the inside for the brake shaft. And so it's just chuck a little bit of oil into this here. And then finally, just a bead of oil here where the brake shaft comes down. So onto the eccentrics and the big end, which is this way. I need to come up higher. It's a simple answer. I'll tell you what I'm going to use. I'm going to use these steps instead. There we go. Perfect. Ergonomics at play. So we're going to work across here by starting off with the big end and filling this right up. And of course, this is a big old reserve because it's got to last us an entire day. Then we get that, lubricate this eccentric like so. Again, this isn't just an industrial. These are big engines with it designed to do many, many miles in a day rather than just pottering out a yard. So they are decent size fillers because realistically, during your day, you're not going to be able to get underneath this to fill these back up. These are do once in the morning and they'll be done again when it comes at shed at the end of the shift. It's also quite warm because behind the stretcher behind me, there is a firebox. And so hot. Give these a quick wipe. And then finally, while we're down here,
this big end, which is entirely in the way. I cannot see that at all. I'll be honest, I'm going to be very glad to have finished down here because it's getting very warm as the engine is starting to come around into steam after that rather good fire that I put in there. So this will be fairly good. And I'll be honest, as internal motion goes, this isn't the worst thing I've ever oiled up. There is room. It's uncomfortable, but there is room everywhere to get to everything. I've done other engines before where you know what you want to lubricate, you just can't reach it. Whereas this one is fairly good in the fact that you can see what you want to get to, and then you can actually get to it. And with the big end full, cork replaced. That completes oiling up. Obviously, we've missed some stuff on the other side, but it's exactly the same as what we've done on this end. But that is one lubricated pannier. And I'm glad it's over. So, with that, and the fact that we're still not quite in steam, I think it's time to return to the footplate and let's go through the controls. So welcome to the command deck of 9681, and what a lovely cab it is. I love these huge windows it has at the front and the rear, which also open up for maximum ventilation. Not that they stay there, but you can get a bit more airflow through there. And of course, this one, being a late engine, is fitted with all of the mod cons. For instance, air conditioning fitted up there. And back here as well, the full power air conditioning by opening up the rear doors here. Everything is nicely laid out, and being a Great Western locomotive, if you understand where everything is on one of them, you'll be able to work out where everything is on any number of them, because it is a standardized layout of controls. And thus, starting here, next door to me, we have the reverser. The only problem I have with this engine is the fact the reverser is right here. And if you have it, well, in anything other than middle or forward, it's just in the way as you're trying to move around the cab. Next door to it on the floor, we have the cylinder drains here. In the typical Great Western fashion, you put your foot down on them and that sends them forward. So this is in the open position. This is part of the old TPWS equipment for when it was actually working out on proper railways. And then we have the magic hydrostatic lubricator just here. Next door to us here, this is the combining brake. So in the current position, this is run. If we bring it this way, it will take the brake off, both the steam brake on the locomotive, and it will generate vacuum, which will take the brake off on the train. By pushing it in a that way direction, we will put the brakes on, both the steam brake on the locomotive and apply the brake for the train. In front of me right here is the regulator, which also links down here to the lubricating here. So when you open the regulator, it will send lubrication to all the places that need lubricating on the front of the engine. You may also notice in the cab, we have these rather large springs that come up from the rear axle. It's one of the few things I'm not a huge fan of because they just look slightly unkempt and untidy being here. I mean, I don't know where else you'd have put them, but they just feel like they're in the wrong place. Then working here, we have the blower, which is apparently a driver control rather than the fireman control. I'd have expected that on all Great Western engines to be that side for the fireman, but apparently the driver has that. We have the driver's side injector, but the water for that is actually over that side. This is the fireman's side injector with the water where you'd expect on the fireman's side, and then we have the steam heat here. And then tucked around here, we have the shut-off for the magic hydrostatic magic lubricator. We have the brake up here, which shows us both how much vacuum we put into the drain pipe and how much is in the reservoir, which is that thing down there. We have our pressure gauge up there, and then the steam heat gauge over there. We have two whistles, the normal tone, and then the other tone there. And apparently at this railway, we're only allowed to use the normal tone, which is disappointing because I like using both of them. And then we have the single gauge frame. Now, this is a Great Western thing that they only ever have one. Most other locomotives built by basically every other railway and manufacturer went, we'll have two for redundancy. Not so, said the Great Western Railway, who went, we'll just put a set of test cocks here next door to it. So if the glass was to break, you isolate that and turn the test cocks on, which will go dribble, dribble, water, dribble, dribble, water. And if they go no water, you know that the water is below that mark. Simple but effective, hopefully long enough for you to be able to change the gauge frame. Then over on this side, we have three taps which are for testing the tank. So these three work on the principle of if you open them and water comes out, water is above that point. If you open it and water doesn't come out, water is below that point. And then down there, we have the two waters. So the fireman is controlling both injector and has both feeds next door to him and just has to reach over here to turn the steam on for the injector that side. There is also a slacker pipe fitted to the fireman side injector so we can wash down the footplate, and then there's a handbrake back here.
And then down here we have both front and rear dampers and the sanding control this side, which again, I would have thought the blower would have been this side for the fireman to control and the sander would have been this side for the driver to control, but not so, because that is the Western way, but we'll ignore that. It does have some other lovely features, like it has fold down seats for your driver and fireman, so you can sit down on the job and take a break, which is lovely. And also you can just lean back and see what's going on from this position. It's quite nice and well laid out. My problem normally with these things is if you're leaning all the way back, it becomes a little bit hard to reach the brake if it's in the brake on position, but that's enough. It's also got hooks where you can hang your jacket up, and then we have shutters here and there which can be brought back in either terrible weather or when you leave the engine to stop the worst weather coming onto the footplate. Oh yeah, and then tucked here is the rear sander. Now this is weird because this is clearly a driver control because it's in reach of the driver. The front sander is over there to be in reach of the fireman, which, just put them both over this side. Oh, it just, Western stuff, it's confusing. Apart from that, everything's relatively laid out nicely. I know what everything is because it's a Western engine. And with everything identified in here, I've been asked if I want to go cleaning. So I thought, well, rather than that, I'm going to have a look around the site. Now, there's a load of stuff in the workshop here, and I've got nothing else to do apart from clean it, and I've escaped cleaning it to have a look around. So this is the commercial job that's been done by the railway. So it's been overhauled here and then it's going away. And it's great to see that kind of skill set being used because it's a great way to bring revenue in. But the thing that I really want to see is behind the camera. This is 9682. This is the sister to the one outside. Apart from this one is very much naked. This is undergoing a full overhaul, and this represents a really good idea because you can have two locomotives which are of a standard design. They share components, they share the same drawings. It's a great money-saving idea to have a fleet of the same locomotive. Also, from a strictly personal point of view, how cool will it be to have two engines sequential off the assembly line as sisters next door to each other running in preservation? And that's going to be absolutely awesome. And not just like you'll bring them together for a visit, but to have them based at the same railway, that is absolutely awesome. Now, you may notice with this, for the observant amongst you, that some of the components of this aren't actually here. Now, a lot of things are elsewhere and scattered around, but it's awful a lot of work is going on to this. It has a new cylinder block that's been constructed as the old one had a crack in it, and we think that it's going to be the first new cylinder block for one of these that's been done in preservation. Also, when this was owned by its previous owners, it got a lot of bits stolen, which was heartbreaking and actually part of the reason that the group kind of gave up with it. But it's great to see something that has had that misfortune, that's had bits taken off it and lost, or nicked, and have a group come along and go, no, we're going to do that. We're going to remake everything. We're going to find components and bring it back. I love a story like this because realistically, this should have been scrapped long ago. And then when the bits are gone, that's the point that a group will go, oh, we can't do anything with it and get rid of it. But for another group to come, acquire it and breathe life into it again, this is going to be amazing. And I can't wait to see the two of them side by side. The problem with something like this is, as you can tell, it's very, very expensive. For instance, just the rear buffer beam, putting a new one of those, the steel alone was 350 quid before you do anything, before you machine it, which is just stupid for a piece of metal. And you consider there's a lot of metal there. It's got a load of new platework going into the rear bunker. The drag box behind is all new. It's a scary amount of work. So keep it on the website and maybe consider helping make this work because frankly, I want to come back and see how this one is compared to the one that's out there.
And whilst I was in the shed admiring all of the work that was going on in there, the volunteers were busy making the loco shine in the morning sun.
Oh. I'm helping. Now, rather excitingly, rather than putting my own headboard on the top, I've been given this, and this is brand spanking new. In fact, just behind the camera, the guy who organised it is looking at me in a very suspicious way as I put my greasy mitts all over it. What's really nice about this, though, is it represents the new generation coming through, and it's for something for all the new people, all the cleaners who are coming along for the evening, to take ownership and say, you're part of this. And I love that, making people feel they're part of it and giving a sense of ownership. Absolutely fantastic, and what I'm part of. And what's really cool, is that they do things like cleaner evenings. And they've got a load of people who come in the evening, have a social, and get an engine clean and ready. And that's fabulous, and that's the way we're going to organise the future, is by doing things just like this. So this represents the future, and a really, really good idea. I'm proper proud to put it on for the first time, because that's brilliant.
With all the important jobs completed, the fire needed some attention before we could move off shed. Before we could begin the day proper, we needed to perform a quick shunt in the yard.
And away. We go. The first thing that strikes you is just how smooth this regulator is. It is one of the most buttery smooth regulators I've ever had the pleasure to use. You just need to put the tiniest amount of effort to make a huge amount of difference. It's almost just use a single finger to control it. Absolutely gorgeous. And then the noise that's related to this handle is something very, very special indeed. And speaking of noise, one of the most glorious things is the fact that we have two whistles. But I do like the fact that two whistles is a wonderful thing on a Western engine. Now, as we come up here, this entire part of the railway is basically climbing uphill, which means I get to use some of the power. And the first thing I really get with this engine is a sense of how little of that power I'm actually going to be using. She gives this a massive sense of being a proper mainline thoroughbred. This is a machine that's designed to work up and down a branch line, working hard with a proper train and not going to break any sweat. It is absolutely, it's wasted on what we've got behind us. The auto coach and a brake van. It doesn't even know that it's there. as we come through here, swinging through the speed restriction, and as we come out the other side, we can open up, and it makes such a glorious noise. That's the noise that keeps you up at night. That's the kind of noise that dreams are made of. That is the single greatest thing about this engine, is the noise and how effortlessly it puts that power down. And then, considering we're quite a long wheelbase, it rides really well around this, well, actually rather sharply curved railway. It really goes left and right in a way that anything much bigger simply wouldn't go through. But this thing, it just takes it all in its stride. It's fabulous the way it eats up any bumps, any jumps in the track. It's just completely unbothered. And I don't think I've driven anything else in, at least for a while, that has such an intoxicating feel on the regulator of, come on boss, let's do more, let's go faster, let's pull more. Because this thing is unreal. So the next stage is we're coming up to a station. And apparently stations mean that I need to stop. So we're going to come around here, shut the regulator, and allow the gradient to take out most of the speed. Then we have our combining brake here, so we're going to knock that off and just allow that to start, dropping the back gently as we come round. Then just a tiny application, and that will bring us nicely to a halt. More or less where we're meant to be. This thing is just, it's so beautifully smooth. I've driven engines where as you set off, you feel all the motion take up the slack, and there's just nothing, it just pulls away just like it's meant to. There's no noise, no clattering, no bangs, everything is tight in there. It's like driving an engine that's brand new, as it would have been back in the day. And then coming round here again, the railway's climbing, so I get to open up this noise machine. I just appreciate it. I mean, I've heard from the crews here that putting this onto a proper load of 5 coaches, it really barks, and they say it's one of the best noises they've ever heard. And frankly, from just poodling along almost light engine, I can agree with them. Now, visibility forwards it's okay. Obviously, there is the tank running straight parallel in front of me, which means that my visibility is somewhat limited. However, I can fix that by going, oh yes. The dome as well is absolutely massive and effectively blocks me from seeing anything over on the other side. So I am entirely reliant on my fireman to let me know how that side of the railway is. But I don't care, because this is fabulous, and to have an engine that's appropriate for this area, running on a typical western branch line, and to open it up through here, through the trees, has got to be one of the most perfect experiences that I've ever had on the footplate. I can almost believe, just for the briefest of moments, that this is real, because it's timeless as we cut through the forest. There's nothing to let me know that we're back in the day. There's a lot to be said about having the right engine on the right line. And this is absolutely the right engine on the right line. It feels perfect here, and I completely understand why the crews love it so much and why it doesn't go out much. Because this is perfectly suited for this fine. It's absolutely perfect running around here. Why would you want to let it go anywhere else where it's brilliant. And the concept of having this one's sister, number 2, and having the pair of them working is absolutely just what a super idea, to have sisters built together, reunited in preservation, running together, standardised parts. It's brilliant. Now, there are some things which are typically Western about this. For instance, the brake is here. If I want to hang completely out the window to see what I'm doing, say to see my front buffer beam, this becomes slightly out of reach unless you are built like an orangutan. I don't particularly have the springs next door to me in the footplate either, but the rest of it, well laid out and very ergonomic apart from that one brake. The other thing I really appreciate with this is the sheer size of the cap. There's enough airflow coming through here to keep you cool despite the sweat pouring off me in the middle of the British summer. There's enough room that you can help yourself, a driver, a cleaner, a fireman, without you all standing on each other's toes. And on an engine of this side, it's something that you really appreciate, just having that extra bit of room. I also love the fact that in the middle there, the fireman has a low recess to hold all the coal in one place so it doesn't scatter all over the rest of the footplates. And that noise. It's got to be one of the best sounding things I think I've ever been privileged enough to have a go on. And I can't get over the fact that nothing leaks, nothing bypasses, there's no steam coming out of places there shouldn't be steam, there's no clanking, there's no banging. It feels fresh out the box. It feels like we could take this out, do 45, 50 miles an hour with a proper train in revenue earning service, and it wouldn't even bat an eyelid. It's got to be one of the best put together, most well looked after, perfect steam locomotives I think I've ever had the opportunity to drive. It's just fabulous. It's the kind of engine that makes you want to go further, makes you want to drive more. And it's the kind of engine that after a day on it, you'll go, oh yeah, that was brilliant, and I want to do it again. Some engines, you know, it's an engine, you'll enjoy your day, but it's hard work. Whereas this thing, it's just a dream. It's so beautifully easy. It's so responsive. And it just does exactly what you want it to do the whole time. You never feel like you're fighting with it. If anything, you're holding it back. And that's got to be the sign of something absolutely phenomenal. And I completely understand why the guys here love it so much. So I mean, given the opportunity, would I hub this? Oh God, yeah, I would hub this in a heartbeat because it's brilliant. I don't think though I'd want to take it away from here, having spent its whole life in this part of the world. I think this is the kind of place that I would love to hub it. Somewhere like here, where it truly belongs. And so that brings us to the end of the video here at the Dean Forest Railway on perhaps my favourite ever engine. This thing is absolutely superb and a credit to the owning group, to the railway and everybody who crews it. It may well be my favourite engine I've ever had a go on. It's absolutely fabulous, and I know I've overused that in this video, but it actually is. So if you've enjoyed this video, how about having a look at the Dean Forest Railway? They're an absolutely wonderful bunch of people, they're super friendly, and they would love you to get involved and learn, well, how to crew this thing, or fix the other one. There's so many things to do around the site, and they're just a lovely bunch of people. So information's in the video description of how to get involved, and a massive great thank you, of course, to the Dean Forest Railway and to the Dean Forest Locomotive Group for allowing me to take out the engine and look after the railway. And in fact, thanks to all the other volunteers. Everyone's been super welcoming, and if it wasn't the other side of the country, I would be volunteering here in a heartbeat. It's just great. So if you have enjoyed this, how about clicking somewhere over there for another Lawrie Goes Loco, or down there for something else related. And with that, we'll see you next time.